like to introduce Teo on the left, Teodora and Molina on the right. Uh, Teodora Molina graduated in 2014,
Yeah.
I believe, and more or less went straight into industry. That year in the summer that they were Student D&AD Awards, and I've never seen a pair of students network a room like that in my life. Right? I've never even seen it in a movie. And they before the awards, they found out who the judges were, who the contacts were, and in that evening they managed to talk to the agency people they needed to speak to. It was very, very impressive. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to hand over to you two, and welcome back to UCLan. Okay.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be back, even if it's just virtual.
I'll switch my camera off. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. It's working.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can all see that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we made a tiny little intro as well, but obviously we've done that before. So I'm Malina.
I'm Teo.
And we graduated 7 years ago. Class of 2014, beautiful Victoria building. I don't know if it looks the same anymore, probably does. And now we're at VCCP. So after we graduated in 2014, we've done a few placements for about a year. So we've done Iris, then MSc Saatchi, then Gray, BMB, and then VCCP. So after a few months of placements at VCCP, we got hired, and we've been there ever since. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Obviously, if you guys have any questions throughout this, obviously just ask them whenever or wait till the end. It's your choice. We don't mind.
Yeah, so we're going to have a Q&A session, but feel free to ask something if you feel like it, or if you can talk in between us talking.
That's always a challenge.
Okay, so about Uni Life. So you probably are very familiar with this. Obviously, going out and getting drunk is a very big part of uni, and we did that a lot. But also, there's some other things that are important as well. So probably the most important thing is building your book, because that's kind of like, that's what you're going to take out from uni, and it will actually help you in the real world. It will help you get placements and for a job.
Yeah, so whenever, Guy or Kev give you like projects to do, just take them seriously. They can end up in your book. They can end up getting you an award. It's actually quite good.
Not the essays. The essays don't matter for anything.
Yeah, just fuck the essays.
I mean, don't do
them, because you have to.
You do them so you pass, but you're not gonna have them in your book, are you? So yeah, but like, think about the thing is, like, your book is obviously all of the things you do at uni, so all of the projects you get, you have to obviously answer the briefs, and they're gonna make it to your book potentially. But also think about what you want to do. So if there's something like, I don't know, the idea pops up, or you like this brand and you want to do an ad for them, or I don't know,
You're
charity.
Passionate about like a charity or like a particular subject that's going on in the world right now. It's always good to like keep your eyes open and like think of ideas like constantly. You never know where your inspiration can come from.
And also people like that. So if you go to a book crit or an interview and you're like, oh my God, I made this because I'm very passionate about this, and people see that you care and that you're doing stuff about stuff that you care, they're more impressed than, oh, I made an ad for some kitchen roll or something,
It's also quite important to have stuff on top of like the D&AD briefs, because obviously in the year you're finishing and you're trying to get a job or like trying to get a placement, everyone is going to have done the same briefs in 70 different ways, and everyone's going to be bored of seeing the same D&AD brief on a page, answered maybe differently, maybe quite similar to what they've seen before.
Yeah, so variety is always good. And also another thing you can do that's quite good is like, if obviously you'll be researching ad agencies and stuff like that. So if you have an ad agency in mind, like say Droga 5, and you're like, oh my God, I really like this agency, I like the work they do, you can look at their clients and see what they have, and then maybe try to answer a brief for write yourself a brief and make a project that's relevant for one of their clients. So when you go for a book read, you're like, oh my God, we did this for one of your clients. What if we came in and we try to actually make this? Because obviously if it's a good piece of advertising or a PR stunt or something, they'll probably be like, oh my God, that's great. Like, yeah, come in and we're going to try and make this happen, hopefully. So it's always good to have like to kind of have your mind on different things, because whilst university is really, really good and helpful, it's kind of like more or less a blanket for everyone. And it's good to show your individuality as well in your book.
And it's also quite important to read a lot. Like it's just like just finding the books that are like quite relevant. So we have like a bit of a like list here.
Yeah, it's like when we were at uni, we went to the library a lot, and we went through all of the ad books and all of the annuals and stuff like that. And these are kind of like the books that teach you about advertising and why some adverts work and different types of advertising and how to construct an advert. So these are more relevant for people who are getting into advertising and students. And these are some of our favorite ones. So The Art of Looking Sideways by Alan Fletcher is an amazing book. It's not about advertising, but it's about creative thinking, and it is absolutely amazing. The Advertising Concept book by Pete Barry, that's very good as well. Talks about how adverts are made. Hey, Whipple Squeeze This by Luke Sullivan and Sam Bennett as well. It's quite interesting.
Obviously, anything Haggerty wrote.
Yeah, Haggerty on advertising, Haggerty on creativity is quite inspiring, and how he managed to do something very different back in the day. And Creative Advertising book by Mario Priken. So this is just like a short list. Obviously, there's way more, but it's good to read about them.
But it's also important to like look at old work, because obviously you need to know like obviously what makes a good ad, and you can find it in D&AD annuals or like creative reviews. There's like Archive or like Epica, and it's just good to be inspired and like look at the art direction and the typography and all of the elements that make an ad that was considered successful.
Yeah, and obviously you can't get into the library probably, but all of these are online. So if you go on the D&AD website, you can flick through the work. Same for Users Archive, and I think all of these, I think you can go online and check the work. And the thing is, like, inspiration is not gonna come from you looking at the wall. That's not gonna happen. I mean, you can have an idea based on your past experiences, and something can pop to mind. But if you're stuck, or if you don't know exactly what to do or how to make something look good, as in like what art direction to do or what layout to use and stuff like that, you can look for them and get inspired, because that's what we do now. If we're like, oh, we have to make some print ads, how do you make them more interesting? We always look through them and see other examples and see like, oh my God, we can use something like this, which is not copying. You're getting inspiration as to like, hey, we can devise something like this, or you're using other ads to kind of help your ad look better.
We've just put some work in of stuff we've done when we were in university a long time ago.
Yeah, so this is something we've done for Amnesty International. They got some student awards. So it's for human trafficking, and it's about like seeing women as currency, and so writing something that's relevant for the subject. And this is another thing we've made that got us into the D&AD Academy, Student Academy, D&AD Academy for Greenpeace, and it's different brands that
are affected by climate change
or can affect climate change.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I think we want to talk about like student awards. So obviously D&AD are very important, and always try to answer the briefs. But the thing is, like, even if you don't win a D&AD, some of the work you've done for D&AD, you can enter to like any of the other sections. So like the work we've done with the human trafficking, we've entered for D&AD, but we've also entered for creative conscience. And we got an award for both. So it's good to look at the other kind of like different competitions out there, student awards and stuff, and see what else you can do. Like Creative Circle is a good one, OICN, and obviously the Young Alliance is very, very good if you get one of those. I think it's the most important after the NAD, I guess. So yeah, have a look and see when you do a piece of work, see if you can fit into other briefs as well, competitions as well, so you can win more than one, or if you don't win one, you win something else. Or obviously just for variety, they have different briefs as well. So yeah.
So yeah, we've gone to the D&AD Academy in 2014 after we graduated. We didn't get the D&AD award that year, unfortunately, but we went to the exhibit and we got the best in show, which meant we were one of the 50 people who got into the academy that year. And this photo now gives me social distancing anxiety.
Yeah, it's so weird. So many people together.
Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, no, it was really good. Let's talk about this a bit.
Yeah, so
no, this.
Yeah.
So that if you ever have the chance to get into the academy, do it, because it's very, very important. As in, like, obviously there's a bit of effort to put into it, because if you win a pencil, you still have to apply for it, which means you have to make a video, you have to put a bit of effort, but it's so worth it because it's 2 weeks. And now I know they do it virtually, but the thing is, like, you learn a lot of valuable things that you don't necessarily learn at uni. So it's very open-minded. And other than that, the networking factor is just amazing, because you meet so many people who work in advertising, and it can give you a book creating. When we did it, we actually worked 1 week within an agency, so we got like mentorship from the agency we worked in. And then obviously off the back of that, you could get some placements depending what agency you are. For example, I was in a design agency, so I wouldn't get a placement there because I wanted to get into advertising, but it was still very useful.
Yeah, you can also like get like, if you talk to like speakers and stuff, you can get like to know them and stuff like that. We had like a brief mentorship by a guy from Google after we finished the academy, so that was like completely unrelated to it, but we've talked to him, and as Guy said, we're quite
talkers,
aggressive networkers. Yeah. Is what he said, I think.
Yeah. And then also is quite relevant is that at the end we actually presented to a panel of clients, so we had to do a big project about Vodafone, and then we worked in the agencies with a mentorship from the agency, people from the agencies, and then at the end we presented our project to actual clients, so senior people from Vodafone who took a look at them, and they were like, oh my god, maybe we can do this. So it's really, really important, because it's the closest thing you're going to do to actually working in an agency. And there's a lot of opportunity that can come off the back of this. Like Theo got to judge the white pencils because of this, and we got different like opportunities because of that, and people get in touch with us.
Yeah. So I judged a white pencil like 2 or 3 years ago, and like it's quite important. The student awards, not a big white pencil. I'm not there yet. But it's quite important to know a couple of things, because obviously when you judge stuff, you're just sat in a room or in front of your computer now for about a day, and you're being bombarded with like different like really good work and like things like that. But the problem is, at one point, you kind of go blind from seeing everything. Like it just like goes over your head because you've seen so much work. So it's quite important to do really standout work that's presented in a new and interesting way. Because, for example, like if there was like slides with too much to read and stuff like that and too much explanation, like people would just not read them, because you don't have time. It's like a whole day that you have to go through, like, I don't remember how many, like about 100 pieces of work. So it's quite important to have. I was quite against like mood films and stuff like that before, but after going and actually judging, I realized that that's probably the best way that you can engage people, like doing an interesting like piece of footage that shows your work. Obviously, you can do like a couple of other images like print or stuff like that, but it's really important to have an interesting piece of film like that or case study that explains your idea, because otherwise it just might go over people's head.
And keep it succinct. Be very harsh and don't add too much, because if it's too long and it takes you 5 minutes to get the point, like if you have a mood film that's like 15 minutes long, and then the first 5 minutes are just insights or intros or like, oh my god, statistics and stuff, well, everybody's gonna get bored and skip it. So make sure you just have like, look, this is our insight, this is where it started, and this is the work, and this is why it's good. So get the point faster, because people are really going to get bored and they're not going to look at it.
It's just the fact that you have to, like, obviously it might be the most interesting thing in the world, but if it doesn't get to the point quite quickly, after watching 50 pieces of like work and only having one break and like just watching it continuously, you just get tired and like a bit like work blind. So yeah, that's a good I think good insight on how to post your DNAD work, because I've never thought of that before going there.
Yeah, so this is all we have about the uni life and what you should do at uni. So if you have any questions, if not, that's absolutely fine. We're gonna go into placements.
Your book is always going to be a work in progress. So if you think that you are going to finish university, you create a book, and it's the last thing you're going to do, and then you just go around and like have book crits and like you get a placement, that's not true.
That you're probably gonna work on your book even more after you finish your
yeah. Probably until you get a job, you just work on your book continuously. It's quite important to like obviously take feedback on board.
Yeah.
Yes. It's quite important to take feedback on board, but also you have to use your gut a bit, because some people will tell you that a piece of work is shit, and some people will tell you that a piece of work is brilliant. So
the same piece of work.
The same piece of work, yeah. So obviously you have to pay attention to what you're doing, and like sometimes obviously you need to know if you value someone's opinion more than others, and like because obviously if it's like a massive creative director from an agency you want to work at, you will want to do their feedback.
Yeah, so you always have to work on it, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's your book. So if you feel like some feedback is not right or it's not exactly what you want to do with that project, just stick with it, and that's that.
Yeah.
And also what some creative teams do, which we haven't done, is they sometimes tailor their portfolio. So they have a portfolio tailored for that agency where they address all of the feedback that they got from one agency to impress them. Then they have their old book, like the initial book. Then they have like they just tailor the initial book to every agency they want to impress. Like they get a feedback in and they make a version of their book to fit that in. So you can do that if you want to too. I don't know. It feels a bit schizophrenic and a bit insincere, to be honest. But like obviously,
it does work. Sometimes.
It does work if you want to go to different. I mean, don't do that for every agency. Do that for Widens. Do that for Giurgea 5. I don't know, Mother. Like do that for the agencies really like and want to go to. And obviously keep your portfolio the way you want it as well at the core of it. But you can make different versions.
Then networking is very, very important. And LinkedIn, you would not realize how important it is for at least getting your foot in the door and talking to someone. Just basically go on LinkedIn, add everyone who has, I don't know, creative director in a title or like creative in a title from the agencies you want to work at, and then just pester them like with messages on LinkedIn. Some of them are not going to get back to you, but some of them will, because some of them actually do want to help like young creatives get into the industry.
Or they just need teams, because agencies always have placement teams and they're always circulating. Obviously you can have a placement team for a month or 3 months. So obviously if they're looking and they happen to stumble upon your portfolio, they're like, oh yeah, let's see if they could come in. And they're all way more forgiving with placements than actual interviews, as in like, oh, they look like they have a good book, oh, let's get them in. And that's that. So the more people you talk to, the better it's gonna be. Definitely LinkedIn. Make sure you have LinkedIn when you finish uni.
Also, this is like a really good piece of advice about not stopping, because sometimes like you get a placement and you think you're doing great, but they still let you go, and it's heartbreaking sometimes. But I mean, you just have to keep going, because
yeah, it's just like don't take it too harshly, because everything is extremely subjective. So if you like, we went to book rates where our book got smashed, like literally, it was like, this is shit, this is not good. We're like, oh my god, but then you go somewhere else and they're like, oh my god, this is the best book we've seen in ages from a student or whatever. So it's like, because it's so subjective, don't take it too harshly. At the same time, if somebody says it's the best book they've ever seen, don't think it's the best book that's ever been made. Like, it's kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess. But yeah, just don't get discouraged, because it's just like, it's gonna happen. Then are we talking about self-promotion? Yeah, so
I lost the slide.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, we went past the slide. So another thing you can do to get a placement is a bit of self-promotion, something that we actually haven't done, but other people do. So if you have something that you can talk about yourselves, like, I don't know, something that
makes you interesting
or unique, or just puts a smile on people's faces and makes them remember you, that's quite important. Like we're Romanian, we're two Romanian women, so we didn't need that because I think that's how people remembered us. I don't know if there's that many teams made up of 2 Romanian girls, so that worked in our favor. But if there's anything that makes you stand out in between a crowd of people, like loads of students that just finished, that's quite good.
Yeah, there was like quite recently these 2 guys like basically took the TikTok agency handles hostage. So basically, because agencies don't actually care that much about TikTok, which if you ask me is a bit old. They basically just made the accounts with each agency's name that wasn't on TikTok, and they said, oh, you can have your handles back if you give us a placement, which was quite good. I think it was quite effective. Like, people were talking about it, and it was everywhere, like in campaign and like the drum and stuff. So
yeah, that's not really self-promotion, but that's something different. That's not an ad, that's just a way of making some bit of PR around you, like, some way of attracting attention, like.
But also, don't go too far, because there was this guy who mailed himself in a box to Wyden and Kennedy's. Unfortunately, the post got there on a Friday evening, and he was stuck in a box for about the whole weekend. So that's quite dangerous.
Yeah, so don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't mail yourself in a box to an agency. Okay, and the last piece of advice I think is like always do things, like always practice, always improve, try to improve your book, always be proactive in like the briefs you choose.
And in agencies, I think it's more about like when you're in agencies, you're gonna get some briefs, but obviously because you're on placement, you're not always gonna get the most amazing briefs. You might get some small social bits or like, I don't know, things using existing assets and stuff, but you want to get a good brief, because the way you're gonna get hired is making yourself invaluable. So you have to produce something or win a pitch or something like that to get a job, really. And you need to work on good briefs to do that. Otherwise, it's gonna care that you made a couple of social posts.
Yeah.
So you always have to ask around, talk to people, what briefs are out there, constantly ask for briefs. Talk to all of the creative directors, ask them, hey, we want to work with you, want to learn, so can we work with you? Can you give us a brief? And, get to know, always talk to the creative teams, talk to all of the creative teams, ask them how they are, what they're working on. Hey, can I help you with anything? And in truth, like, the way you're going to get hired is like 50, or let's say 60% the work you do and 40% how you are as a person, because it's kind of a community. You don't want to hire an asshole or somebody who doesn't talk or is not friendly or whatever. So it's good to make a good impression and get along with people as well. That's quite important. And always look for work to do. Like when we were doing our placements, we were like first people to go in, the last people to leave and stuff like that. Obviously not the case now with working from home, but you get what I mean. It's kind of like you have to show that you're really hungry and you really, really want it. Otherwise, they're not going to hire you.
Yeah. The next thing we're going to talk about is just like the ad industry. So it's very different from university, very, very different. All of the work should start with a brief. It's not always the case, but then,
it's just, but the brief doesn't come from you. So it's like, it's a different process in the industry. So the client writes a brief, it comes into the agency, the brief is processed by the planners and accounts people who make a creative brief. And you get a creative brief that's written by other people telling you what you need to do, what this project needs to do, and you come up with a creative way of solving that brief. So you get a bit of help from some people. Obviously, it's not like just you coming up with everything, and you have to answer that.
And usually, how in university you get a few weeks to work on a project, you kind of get a few days max. We've had projects where we had to like start thinking of ideas, like develop them and go back to the client in about 3 days, which is not a lot of time. You have to like get used to like actually being able to like come up with ideas quite quickly and actually like mock up stuff really quickly. And sometimes you don't get a lot of time.
Yeah, and don't get too precious about things, because 90% of everything you're gonna do is gonna die. Because even if you're producing, like for example, you're like, okay, somebody bought your idea on, I don't know, on Coca-Cola, whatever, and you're gonna make it because the client really likes it, you did good research and whatever. Even then, you're probably gonna write about 50 scripts and you're gonna make about, I don't know, 50 print ads, and you're going to write loads of things, and you're going to make one TV ad and one print ad or whatever. So you're going to have to keep working and keep making loads of work, and just a very small percentage of that is actually going to be made. But that's just the nature of it. So don't get discouraged.
I mean, yeah, this is kind of what happens. You kind of have to do changes continuously.
Yeah, some like the clients, like obviously because everything's very subjective, the client is always gonna come back and be like, oh, one more changes. Oh, can you change that? Oh, can we have another version with that? And you kind of have to kind of do it all the time. And it just gets to like 50 rounds of like going back and forth with the client. But you know, at the end of the day, it's just to create the best work. So that's fine. But it's just sometimes it just takes a long time. And you have to have patience and a lot of resilience. That's the word, resilience. You have to kind of like just don't think about it, just keep going, because it's gonna happen. We have to keep going.
And also, if you think that proactive work is going to end once you have a job,
Nope.
It's not. So on top of all of the things you're working on, if you want to win an award, it's usually you kind of have to do something proactive, because awards rarely start from like the work that the client asks you to make.
Yeah, so always kind of think like, what else could you do? Again, do you have a passion, or do you want to do something for a charity? Or, oh my God, I have a great idea for this client. Like, what if we did this cool PR stunt for this client, and you pitch it to the creative director? And they're gonna be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, let's present it. And obviously, again, that's even less likely to happen. But if it does happen, it's actually really good. So you always have to keep thinking. Obviously, it's a creative industry. So if you're a creative, you always think of creative things, or it just comes to mind, or like, I don't know, you get used to thinking that way. And if something good comes to you, talk to your creative director and be like, oh my God, I had this idea. Couldn't we just make it happen? Like, let's find a client, let's make it happen. We have a thing now at work actually called Ideas Club, where we get a kind of like a brief that's very tactical every month, and we try to solve it. Like, for example, we have a brief that's COVID related. Hey, how do you get people to vaccinate or whatever? So you think of like different ways of making this happen, and if a good idea comes to mind, and they think, oh my God, this is brilliant, we're gonna try to make it happen as an agency kind of thing. So, but that's still proactive work. It's not for a client, you know. It's just for you, really.
And then you have to be very open-minded. You never know when an idea is going to be good. Like you have to consider an idea from every angle, and like think of like everything you can think of, like to make it better. And also you have to you never know.
Yeah, and also is the fact that you might do work for clients that, or stuff you don't like. I mean, or stuff you had know nothing about. Like we've done some ads for Petty Power, and guess what? We're Romanian and we don't watch football. So, you know, we're like, okay, let's just find some out about it, or like find out what they like to see or whatever. So it's like you're gonna work on stuff that you have no idea about. Like we had to work on a project for what's that key retirement thing?
I still don't know what it is.
It's equity release.
Oh yeah, equity release.
So you like, I'm not gonna get into it because I don't know if probably you might know what equity release means. You might not know, but if you get a project that's about equity release, you're gonna find out what it is. You're gonna learn about it, and you're gonna make ads, all right?
And then you're gonna completely forget in a couple of years, like we've done now.
Yeah, so and stuff like that. So you're gonna work on things that are very, very different from one another, and not all of them are gonna appeal to you or you're gonna be aware of. But that's that.
Another thing we want to talk about is gathering inspiration. So you never know where inspiration is going to come from. So you have to like cast your net quite widely. Like, I don't know, watch movies, watch TV shows, read, look at art. Like, you never know what's going to like trigger something in your head, and you have to have like kind of like all of the information you gather and sits in the back of your head. Sometimes it just comes up, oh, I've seen this in a TV show. Wouldn't it be fun to do something like this, like a situation or like a piece of dialogue that you think is really, really cool?
And I'm sure everybody watches TV shows, especially now. We're just watching stuff that's diverse. So watching thrillers as well as comedies, as well as, I don't know, dramas or historical things. So like having a very diverse spectrum of the things you're seeing, like art, you can like look at art or photography or like, you know, everything.
Play video games.
Yeah, more or less.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Books, again, write books that are written in different ways, not just comic books, or not just, I don't know, Game of Thrones, or like, that's very good, but don't just read the same kind of books continuously or watch the same kind of things. Even though if you're a big, I don't know, comedy fan, don't just watch comedy, because you need to open up your imagination, and different doors are going to open if you're watching different things. And now these are some ads we've done.
Hopefully this is going to play.
Some people think they're so special. This method allows me to really connect with my work. Oh, does it? Yes, we're all looking.
Welcome to this week's Pebble Yoga Vlogcast.
Unfollow. And who's this guy? Well, he's just won Paddy Power Games Daily Jackpot. It's guaranteed to be won every night by 11 p.m. Yeah, someone wins every single day, mate. So don't think you're special, all right? Paddy Power Games. Someone wins tonight and every night.
So this is a piece of work we've done for Paddy Power.
How do you go?
Sorry.
Some people think they're so...
Technology. Okay. Then we've done some work for JTO.
Yeah, gonna need a bigger frankfurter. Yeah, tell me about it. Get some colour in you. Let Mojo give you some pearls of wisdom, right? To barbecue well, be a lion, an alpha, Tsar of the savannah. Hunt the best meats. Wear a silly apron. Barbecues are about times, not thongs. Colourful barbecues start with colourful drinks. Grab this barbie by the passion fruits and roar! Cook that frankfurter, Frank. J2O, find your Mojo.
Come on. No, not again. And we've this is the last one we're showing you. We've worked along Compare the Market.
Yeah.
A lot.
Biggest client.
Oleg, do you want to build a snow cat? Can't hold anymore. Let it go, let it go. Turn away the cold never bothered me anyway.
Merry Christmas from ComposerMarket.com.
Okay. And that's all.
That's my difficult.
Yeah, I know. Annoying.
For Q&A time.
Q&A.
That was fantastic, Teodora Molina. You okay to stop sharing? So
Yeah, I'll stop sharing now. Yeah.
I'm seeing a horrible reflection of myself. I mean, are there any questions from anyone? Because Teodora Molina, I think I'm going to have to watch you talk again, because you offered so many tips and advice within the dialogue. You know, what students can do, what they shouldn't do, what they should look out for.
Yeah.
I think you've answered at least 12 questions throughout your talk.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Although we talk very fast, so if we didn't catch anything, or we kind of gone very fast for something.
But we do have Olivia. Olivia Pete has a question for you.
Hi, so that was a really good talk. So when you talk about what
Olivia, can you turn your volume up, please? We can't hear you.
How do I do that?
Go closer to your microphone, probably.
Okay. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a really good talk. So when you talk about widening your horizons of inspiration and stuff, keep your eye open, what things would you say have inspired you to get where you are?
Well, inspiration comes as you go, so it's nothing particular inspired us to be where we're here. some things can inspire us to come up with ideas for projects. Like, for example, we're doing this project on peanut butter, and we have references for films. Like, oh my God, look at that intro for that film. Maybe you can do something similar for this and show how the peanut butter is made. That's just an example. But I couldn't have thought of that idea if I've not seen that film, which had that intro that's interestingly made, and you could make that with peanuts, for example. Or, it's just like you can do all sorts of like spoofs or pastiches of different things. So it's good to always kind of like keep your eyes open, and you never know where it comes from, but the more information you have, the more likely you are to come up with more diverse ideas.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, we've got we've got Sean. Sean next.
Yeah, really enjoyed your presentation. Very good, and a wide variety of stuff that you've done. One thing that you didn't mention as important in your work or generally was humour and having a sense of humour, because I thought that came through very strongly in what you'd done, but also it was done with a very British sense of humour. And you'll know that humour is very different depending on what country you go to in Europe. German sense of humour is very slapstick, and but your work is very much about a British sense of humour. The alpaca and the meerkats and everything else. I just wondered whether you'd like to comment on that, and comment a little bit about humour and whether you do consider that important, or you don't.
I would say that humor is very important, because obviously you're basically interrupting someone's watching experience with the work you make, basically, like, because that's what an advert does. So sometimes it's actually quite important to do something quite funny, just so they remember stuff by. But I wouldn't say, it's very important, but I wouldn't say that necessarily humor is the only way you can do that. You can do something like quite serious and quite like heartbreaking, and then people are going to react to that in a different way. Although, yes, humor is important.
Yeah, humor is one aspect of like the way you make ads. And it's very important to have a good sense of humor, or like what kind of humor or tone of voice works with different ads, because you can have something that's, I don't know, very, very funny, something that has subtle jokes, and obviously you have to know that. But again, we just said that obviously you have to get inspiration from comedy films, from comedians. Obviously, like, we didn't go for everything, but obviously watch stand-up comedies. We go and watch stand-up comedies. We used to go and watch stand-up comedies sometimes. It's really important, because with stand-up comedies, for example, you get very insightful jokes, and that's what's important about it. And not say the funniest, but the insights are very interesting with stand-up. And obviously it's very important, but it's not necessarily more important than knowing how to do things that are very heartfelt or very human or very truthful. It's another aspect of advertising.
Yeah, I mean, one example is Paddy Power, right? Which is a very male sense of humour, very much a pub sense of humour, and perhaps an acquired taste, perhaps very chauvinistic, in a sense. But you'd actually got that in that barbecue advert in the Llama. I thought it was actually very funny. But I just wondered how you cope with that, not being from another part of Europe, and trying to work in quite a kind of niche British culture, really. Football, horse racing, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's a bit of getting used to, obviously, because we did have like the uni experience to kind of prepare us for like getting used to like the British culture a bit more and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's kind of, you have to do a lot of research to get to a point, because if you don't, like, obviously I don't know that much about online gaming, and we still did like an ad for Paddy Power, which it did quite well, I think.
Yeah, and it's also like, obviously people are gonna help you. So if you have a good idea, but obviously they're like, oh my God, you could use that expression there. Oh, that's what people say. So it's like, if you're from a different country, it shouldn't matter that much. If you have a good idea, you write in a certain way, people can chip in and be like, oh my God, we can use that expression there. Or that's what people will say in that situation, and help you out a bit, especially creative directors. Also, I feel like because we've only worked here in this country, I think we'd find it very hard writing ads in Romanian. Like we actually got briefed for a client of ours is opening up in Romania, and they asked us to make an ad in Romanian, and we actually we really struggled because we're not used to the kind of ads that run in Romania. We're not used to the humor. We're not used to what is popular there anymore because we've not lived there for the past 10 years. So I think I find it easier to write ads for British people than we do for Romanian people, really.
Yeah, it's a lot of getting used to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very good. Well done. Enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
I think Finza. Hi, Finza.
Hiya. Thank you for the talk. It was actually really informative. I enjoyed it. I did have two questions, but I think the first one's kind of been answered. I was going to ask if your Romanian culture has influenced any of your work, but I guess if you've not been there for the past 10 years, I guess maybe it wouldn't as much.
Not really. And the thing is, like, there was a thing that advertising is not about you. So obviously it's nice to make ads that speak to you, as in, like, you know, about subject matters that you care about. But your personality doesn't have to come out in the ad. I mean, it shouldn't come out in the ad because the ad has to have the personality or the tone of voice of the brand, or has to work for that brand. It's not like, you know, it's not art. You know, I'm not putting Romanian things into it because I'm Romanian. If it's like for JTO, it has to be British. If it's for Paddy Power, it has to be Laddie. If it's for Meridian, it has to be Wholesome. I don't know. It's like, you know, you have to stick with the tone of voice of that brand, sorry, and make it work for that brand as opposed to making something that's relevant to your personality or your background. Or that's why we said you should be open-minded, because it's not going to be about you or about what you like necessarily.
Yeah. Although it does, I mean, I guess our backgrounds make us who we are, and like in a way our experience will affect what we write in some way, but it's not supposed to like necessarily come out you write in that.
Oh, okay. And then being like a younger and like female members of the industry, would you say your process in working on a brief is different to everyone else? And like, what is your general process?
No, it's the same. I mean, obviously, people are more open-minded. It's not like the 50s or like whatever, even the 90s, where it was very sexist and stuff. I mean, and especially after the
Me Too movement.
Yeah, the Me Too movement. Like now, it's like nobody's ever going to discriminate. Like it's all perfectly fine. The process is the same for everybody. Like, are you interested what the process of like in the agency is? Like, we do creative reviews with the creative director. So we come up with ideas. We get the brief. We come up with ideas. We have a few days or maybe a week if we're lucky to think about ideas and write them down. And then we present the creative director, who's what we want to be in like 15 years or so. Like, you know, you get there and you kind of run projects. So he gives us feedback. And then once he's happy with the work we have and other teams have, we take it to the full team. So everybody, like from the planner, the accounts people, to everybody's going to look at the work and share opinions. And then once everybody's happy internally, they're going to present the client, or we're going to present the client. So that's how the process works in the agency.
And then after that, it's basically a back and forth, depending on production times and stuff like that. It's just back and forth with the client, like presenting the second time, the third time, after we've taken on board their feedback. And sometimes you kind of have to push back on some stuff because you don't think it's necessarily right. But yeah, that's kind of the process.
And it's the same for everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're junior, if you're on placement, you're going to work the same way as the senior creative is going to work, which makes it more tough because obviously they have more experience, so they're more likely to come up with better work. But, you know, that's that.
You never know where a good idea is going to come from, though.
All right. And sorry, finally. So from other talks, we learned about how technology has influenced work and how some people didn't have the advanced technology we do now. Would you say that, how has working in a more technology revolving world influenced your work?
Well, I've never worked in a non-technology revolving world, so I don't know. Like, I don't think things have changed that much since we started. Yeah. The only thing that's changed is the pandemic, and now we're kind of all working from home and always on Zoom calls like the whole day. So that's the thing that changed, but we've only been in the industry for like 5-6 years. Yeah.
I'm assuming that most of the things now is like everything is online. Like that's a different thing. Because you do all of your presentations online, and like a lot more people are more tech savvy. So like most creatives will know how to use most Adobe like programs and stuff. It's quite important to actually know how to do that, because like we've had some older teams that didn't know how to do that because they were copywriters, and it did really affect their work, because you can't efficiently present work that someone looks at it and says, okay, yeah, obviously we're going to change it and actually have designers make it nicer, but I see where you're going with the vision of it.
Yeah, basically, the more skills you have, the better. So the more things you can do, the more programs you can use. Like Theo can code, and that helped us. Like we have our website that she coded and stuff like that. And not saying that you need to code, but the more skills you have, that's always going to help you.
And it's also quite good to like keep in mind like what technology is doing at the moment, because like there could be a piece of tech that could help you in your work, or like, because now I think VR and stuff like that is quite important, and a lot of people do that. But yeah, it's quite important to keep in mind what's new and like what people are doing, what's the trends in tech, I would say.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Vincent. I think we've got Kev next.
Oh yeah, okay. That was brilliant. I've just got a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Really, I was so pleased that you mentioned at the start about books and things like that. We've had a few speakers mention this week about the importance of having something that's curated, and going online and just looking at ads is great. But when you see something like a D&AD annual, or some of the books that you mentioned, like Looking Sideways, things like Just for Information and stuff, and something that's been written and curated. My question related to that is, do you still buy advertising? Now you've been in the career a few years and you live it, day to day. Do you still buy advertising books and things like that? And also, what was the last book that you read that, it doesn't have to be advertising, but the last one that you kind of enjoyed?
Oh, we read a lot, so
yeah. I've actually I have one that's more different than what I would usually read in general. I've read the graphic novel Mouse, which is about the Holocaust seen as in perspective of mice, basically. So the Jews are mice, the Nazis are cats, and it's actually quite a cult classic. And
it's tasteful. Don't worry.
Yes, it is very tasteful. It's very sad, but it's quite different than what I would usually read, and it was very, very good. The artwork in it is different. It's like so well written and thought through that it really, really, like, not necessarily inspired me, but it's something good to have in your, like, the back of your mind always, like how you can do a story in a different way and still be tasteful and still be interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I've read not the last book I've read, but I've read a book called Am Pilgrim, which is very interestingly written. It's a kind of a murder mystery, a modern murder mystery that also involves the pandemic, which is not fun, but it's really good.
I've just finished that one.
Sorry?
PT, I've just finished that.
Oh, really? Oh, it's good, isn't it?
The second time. It's better the second time.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, because you have more of an idea of what's happening, because there's so many things happening at the same time. You can get confusing.
Brilliant writing.
But the second novel's been on the shelf for 2.5 years. There's problems with releasing. Is it Terry Hayes, the writer?
I think so.
Yeah, Terry Hayes. Yeah.
There's been controversy about the second novel that he's written, and the release date. It's a bit like the Bond movie. The release date keeps getting put back.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I don't know. In advertising books, I've not actually read it in any recently.
Well, the thing is with advertising books, most of them are kind of like for people who are trying to get into advertising. So, and we've read so many. I mean, at home, I think I have 20 of them. So I'm like, I think I read that. I mean, it's always good to look through annuals, and at the agency, we kind of always get the D&AD annuals, and we have Giurgea's archives and stuff like that. But
and it's also all online now, so
you can find them online. So we don't really buy those anymore, because they're all apart from the Lions, the Cannes work. Everything is online.
Yeah.
And then books, yeah.
Yeah,
I have 20.
Yeah, we've actually, like, this week we've watched all of the Super Bowl ads, and like, although it's good to watch them, but they're very different, and the way the comedy works and stuff like that, because it's very like over the top and very American.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Oh, that's brilliant. I'm glad that it's when you were talking about the non-advertising stuff that you read, it was really good to hear that, because I think it's forgetting, just like you said, just having stuff in your head,
Yeah,
things like that that's around. And I think as you move through your career, I think you're absolutely right. I think you get less. It's less about the learning the ropes, if you like, and just filling your head with stuff that's not coming from advertising.
Yeah.
It's brilliant to hear that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, because
No, go.
I would say that the best ads are the ads. I mean, not all the time, but most of the time, the best ads are the ads that don't seem like ads.
Definitely. No, it's bang on that. Thank you very much. Well, coming off on that, one last question is, obviously, you've worked for a few years and you've worked across a lot of different media. And from what Guy said in his intro, obviously, because I didn't teach you too, but you seemed very confident moving across media when you were students as well. You didn't seem to be fazed by video, or whether it was a press ad or something like that. I suppose I want to say, have you got a favourite medium that you work in, or is there any that you maybe a bit intimidated by, or you're not too keen on?
Really. I mean, the one we prefer is TV, because you get to go on an amazing shoot and eat for free and get drunk every night and shoot and not really
possibly
work.
travel
And then have a nice wrap lunch afterwards and travel abroad. And yeah, that's why we prefer TV. But
yeah, I mean, it's nice to sometimes have time to actually like think of a brief and think where it would work best. Although at the moment you usually kind of get a media agency telling you what they've bought and like where you should make it work. But sometimes it's quite nice to get like, oh, so we have this idea for TikTok, for example, so we're going to do something on TikTok. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you can so it's very hard, because like I guess the idea sometimes can dictate that. So obviously you can get the brief, so it's kind of like, oh, you have to make a TV ad with some print ads and maybe some social to go with it. But sometimes you're like, oh my god, what? Obviously, if you have a bigger client has budget, oh, what if we did this really cool thing on TikTok, or what if we did this PR stunt, or like what if, like, you know, so if the inspiration comes, you can always have an extra thing that's like, oh, what if this cool thing could live there? But I don't think we have a preference in terms of that. It's just like, it's whatever works for the project. We just like TV because it's more glamorous. Yeah, it's fun. You go abroad and you drink and you eat and you meet actors sometimes in school.
Do you know what? I wish more people were that honest about why they like TV. I think it's brilliant, because yeah, you're exactly right, and it's all, you know, you speak to anyone, you know, any creators in the pub behind closed doors, things like that, that's exactly what they're on about. But when you get them in front of a camera or they're on the stage, it's like, oh, I love TV because it's a free medium and all this. No, it's not. It's about the getting pissed and going abroad, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it is a nice medium to tell a story. You can say a lot more than you can say in a piece of print, obviously, because you have more time of like the person's like who's watching it, as opposed to a print that you kind of look for 2 seconds and then put away. But
yeah, it's all right. We know.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, it's so nice to go somewhere.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Cheers.
I love the build up to the Paddy Power, the piss takes, and how did you get those through? Were there any that you couldn't get through? You know,
yeah, we had 100.
I can't imagine you only had those 3.
My god, I think we worked on that for like half a year. We had so many different scripts and so many different ways. I think we had about like 10 ways into that route.
Yeah, I think we filmed like 6 scenarios anyway. I'm not sure if they've actually like put like exchange scenarios at some point. But
yeah, we had they wanted to make 2 ads with different scenarios, the same thing with different scenarios, and we had 2 more that we filmed, but we wrote so many. I think we wrote about 50, and that was for this way in. So we had different ideas. This was one of the ideas, and this was one way in of the idea, and this is the script that actually got made from all of the kind of different scenarios we thought of for this idea. So it was a very long process.
That's still a lot less than until we got the JTO thing out. The JTO thing took a year and a half.
I think we had 80 scripts for that.
So basically, we done the pitch. We won the pitch with the idea of Mojo the alpaca. And then basically we had to write 5,000 scripts. I don't know where we got to.
I think we're
a
about
year
80.
and a half.
Yeah.
About a year and a half took us to actually get that out.
So I guess patience is a virtue.
Resilience
Is
is called.
Yeah.
We actually have resilience course. You go to resilience training to be like, you can do it. Don't worry if it gets hard. And we're like,
if you feel like punching someone in the face, don't. Basically.
Yeah, but like, yeah, you get used to it in a way. Like sometimes it's a bit daunting, but at the end of the day, the ads have to be made. Whatever happens, you're gonna make an ad, or somebody's gonna make an ad, and that's that. And you're gonna forget about it, kind of, and you move on. It's not always like that, but for big clients or like a big change, like a pitch win, they're very. Sometimes the clients are afraid because they don't want to be too risky, or it's just like you have to convince them because you want to do good work, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of convincing sometimes, but it's fine. You get there in the end.
Yeah, at one point it has to go out.
Yeah.
I've got a question on behalf of the students. I'm imagine this. I'm thinking about moving to London, but I'm not sure. I've never been to London. I've never worked in London. What's your advice for young graduates now?
London's the best place to be in advertising, especially in England at the moment. I wouldn't say that Manchester is that good.
Yeah, but the good part is that we live in a pandemic, and I know this is amazing, but you can work from home. So obviously you could work from, I don't know, up north somewhere or wherever you live, or wherever you have, like, you can go and live somewhere and pay less on your rent, obviously, and get London wages, which is way better. So that could work now, but then obviously if things start opening up, you'd have to move to London.
I found it daunting at the beginning, but you really get used to it. And also, like, there's so many things. Well, once everything reopens and so life goes back to normal, hopefully, there's so many things to do in London that obviously, like, all of the stress of living in a big city actually is worth it. Like, there's always something, like a pop-up. There's like always like theater. There's like so many events and like museums, and like it's so much better than just, I don't know, being in a small town. I think
obviously, like, the problem is won't be paid a lot, but when we started doing placements, we got paid
less,
12k a year, which is £1,000 a month, and we basically had no money.
Now everyone has agreed to that living wages pledge, so they actually pay placements better.
Yeah, I think placement teams usually get paid 18,000 a year, and then if you're kept on for more than 3 months, so if your placement is extended,
you get 25.
Yeah, you get 25k, which is quite good. So it's way better than when we started. Like, we got carried on for nothing more. So when we were VCCP before getting hired, we had to work there 6 months for like the same wage. So it's like,
no, they gave us freelance wage after a few months. They did
18k, didn't they, or something?
No, they did 25.
Oh yeah, they did. Sorry, they did give us
25
more, but some places don't. I mean, it's just like, it's way better now. So yeah.
Well, no, that's really good to know that things have improved. Certainly, with students getting paid on work placements, and particularly London, it's so important. If you don't have anyone to live with, or you're sofa surfing with friends, but that's a good tip to know. I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Yeah.
And I'll whisper this. What's after VCCP? And don't tell me you don't have any plans.
No, we actually don't have any plans.
At the moment, considering the current climate,
you don't want to move.
Yeah, it's quite hard to move. But I mean, not necessarily that there's no places hiring, but it's just obviously you never know how well a different agency is doing unless you're inside it. And obviously when they're trying to hire you, they're going to tell you it's doing great. But like, if they're about to lose a client, or if they lose a client, you're the first one to go, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It is very hard. That's why we've been here ages, because first of all, Brexit, and it was a bit of like, not a lot of people are hiring anyway now, because a lot of agencies have done redundancies and stuff.
Because of COVID and stuff.
Yeah, and losing clients and stuff, including VCCP has done redundancies. And even those who are hiring, it's like very hard to find a job, because a lot of people who got made redundant are desperately looking for jobs. And that is just...
But people are hired.
Just very risky.
It's just risky at the moment. Like, so that's why we kind of are planning to stay for a while.
But for placements, it's fine. We have placement teams. So placements, I think they're still gonna get placements and hire people off placements. But it's different when you're getting hired or higher salary and you have more responsibility, and especially in the middle bit, I think it's quite risky now because we're kind of midweight. So people are keeping their CDs because they're kind of important as a foundation for the agency. And then if we have very junior people, placement teams, they don't really count as much because their salary is not that big. So they're gonna get rid of the people in the middle, which is a bit
tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, VCP is doing quite well right now.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's good to hear. Just another question. At the moment, we've got certainly final year students and second year students that are producing, that will produce online digital portfolios, right?
Yeah.
Now, these aren't like their college portfolios, obviously, with the projects in, and Kev and I mark them. And I just wondered if you've got any tips or advice about online, online advertising, student trying to get work placement or maybe even look for a job. Certainly the second years are looking for work placement.
Can I just add to that as well? Because I was going to ask another question along those lines. So rather than coming on later, I think if I can add something to what Guy said as well, is obviously now you're the other side of the fence from what you talked about at the start of your presentation, putting your book together. So following on from Guy's point about student portfolios, I was wondering, have you now, obviously you've done the awards judging and things like that, but do you get sent, or do you look at student portfolios on behalf of VCCP? And what's your process for going through them? And when you mentioned about doing placements, how are placements working for students in lockdown?
So wait, there's a few questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Online portfolios, I would recommend using a website. Like if you can't code, that's not a problem, like just use like Wix or GoDaddy or something that offers you a website builder. So people are busy. You shouldn't send them like a massive PDF that they have to download, or like a massive PowerPoint presentation that they have to download, because people are just gonna not take the time to do it. It just is effort that you're adding on top of their day. So if you send them a link and it's an easy to access website, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and also again, just have your best work there. So if it's like you'd rather have 3 good pieces of work than have 10 pieces of work and half of them are completely rubbish. Or mediocre, because they're gonna remember that and they're gonna be like, oh, that's kind of shit. I mean, do you want those people? Or like, if you just have good work, they can only judge you against good work. So yeah, it's a good, I mean, that's a thing with any portfolio. Like, you'd rather have a smaller portfolio with better work than a larger portfolio.
I think editing is very, very important, especially, as I said, like, for example, a creative director at our agency has meetings back to back. I mean, not necessarily that they're the most important, like they're not in charge at the moment of looking at books and placements, like, but it's just like people have meetings over meetings over meetings. So
yeah, and in terms of VCP, usually what an agency does is they assign a team to look after placements and stuff. It's not us at the moment. There's a different team who's actually looking for placement teams and stuff. We can always say, hey, like, we can talk to them and say, hey, look, these people have just graduated and we think they're good. So it's not like we can't say anything, but we're not necessarily in charge of it. What else did you ask?
Placements at the moment, but we've not had one in a while, but we've restarted doing it and they're still looking for some more. So at the moment it works like we all work. So from home, just obviously you're on calls, like on Google Hangouts and stuff like that, like emails and stuff like that. It's not as nice as, being in an agency and actually talking to people at the, like I don't know, whilst getting a coffee or a tea. But it's quite important for people, like if you're getting to that position, to actually like try to talk to other creative teams, not even if they're like not creative directors and stuff, because they can help you. Like we've been talking to our placement team and like trying to figure out if they're okay, and like talking to them, like giving them advice and stuff, just to like help them in a way, because it's more complicated than it usually would be.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a complicated treatment.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you're still taking placements in, because I know a few students been worried about obviously, like, now everyone's working from home, our agency's still doing placements. So this, is that process still there? And I think it might be putting off, not necessarily our students particularly, talk about the wider industry, putting people off going for placements, thinking, right, I'll just leave it until it's done. So it's quite good to hear that.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So like it's worth like putting yourself out there and trying, because some places aren't doing them, but like there are a lot of places that are.
Yeah, it's not everybody yet. So we've not had placements for a while. Yeah, last year at all. But now we started doing them again, and I think some other places are doing them.
I think that's the same. I think Kevin and I are getting feedback from other agencies about that. It's the same thing, isn't it? Because the offices have been empty, for various reasons. And but I can't thank you enough for your talk. Honestly, it's been brilliant. I just wish you'd speak quicker next time.
We can't physically; it's impossible. We have lots of things to say.
Are there any more questions? I can see Olivia. Olivia, did you forget to put your hand down, or have you got another question? I can't hear. Can you hear?
I think the hand's just been left up.
It's just been left up.
I left mine up for a bit as well. I always forget.
Yeah. I'm just checking the chat, and there are no questions in that. Does anybody, anyone in the group, any of our students have anything they'd like to ask Teodora Molina? Oh, we got Sean, but Sean's back. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, really interesting listening to you. From an education point of view, maybe quite an odd question, but I was just wondering if you were asked to come and work in a university, given the experience you've had now, right? What would you consider? What would you change about an advertising course? Is there anything you would add based on the experience you've had? Anything you thought you didn't have enough of while you studied at Preston, for example? I'm not getting at anybody here. I'm just wondering whether the currency of advertising education, and whether you had any thoughts about university courses and maybe things they're not giving students.
Yep, definitely. Briefs the way we do them in the industry. That's the thing I would do, because the thing is, like, what you actually do in your advertising course is learn how to think creatively,
which is good,
which is half of it. So the first year and most of second year is learning to think outside the box and thinking of like creative solutions to problems or whatever, creative thinking, which is a very good foundation, because without that you can't write ads. Like, you wouldn't even know where to start. And then you start doing projects and you get into like student awards and like you make different whatever. But then I think in the third year it's quite important for at least half of the year, most of the year, to have briefs the way and do them the way we do them in an ad agency, like proposition, target group, what we're trying to say, whatever, insight or whatever. Obviously not giving them too much, because in an ad agency we get false starters as well, so we kind of get a lot of help. So the planners are trying to help us as much as possible for us to come up with ideas, but kind of like get a sense of like, because when we first saw a brief I was like, what's going on? I mean, we're writing our briefs but not the same way as an ad agency would, and work in the same way, like come up with some ideas, present ideas, the idea boards. I didn't know what an idea board was when I went into the industry, which is like, it's not very complicated. It's just like, a slide with some words and some, but it's good to work like that, at least a bit. So when you go into the industry, it's not like, oh, what's an idea board? You look a bit like, we have no idea what's happening. And then idea boards, and then you have an idea board, the mood board, there's some scripts, and then print that. So you have a deck of like these different things, exactly the way you'd have them in the industry. And that I think helps. So you're a bit more familiar once you go in, and you don't feel like a complete alien or like a bit, I don't know. not necessarily, or it can be a bit daunting if you don't really know what's happening. So I think that's a thing that, that's a way you could actually treat different projects and briefs you get in at uni, really.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Also, I would change Guy.
Yeah, change Guy.
I would too.
Upgrade him.
I would definitely change me, without a doubt.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Great, thanks.
No worries.
Okay, everyone. So then, no more questions for Teo and Malina? No. Well, in that case, I really want to thank you two, because I know you're very busy. And it was an hour and 13 minutes. Malina said we're going to be bang on an hour with all this, with Q&A. So we're slightly over, but that's good. And I just want everyone to. Oh, hang on, we've got young. All right, Pete, do you want to come on camera, Pete?
Do I have to?
Well,
I just wanted to say that was wonderful and really nice. Seeing the work and seeing how you two are like maturing, and it's no surprise. It's no surprise.
They've not changed.
And I think I was smiling all the way through the presentation. Fantastic advice. So just keep it up. Yeah, keep it up. We'll see you for a beer soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think that's why there's less questions, because you were offering lots of advice through your talk. From uni experience, advice, placements, advice, and then when you got into industry, there was quite a lot of advice there as well. So you covered a lot of bases there, and I'm sure if myself and the students re-watch this, they can pick up the tips again. Definitely.
Oh my God, I forgot your recording. We didn't swear. It's good.
Didn't we?
I don't think so.
But I just want to thank you again. I really, really do. And Kevin and I definitely would like to see, and Pete would like to see you back at uni once things are more flexible. We'll get you back in and run a brief, maybe a one-day brief again, or something else even.
Yeah.
But can everyone give a round of applause, please, to Teodora Molina? Digital virtual round of applause. Right. Well, I'm gonna say goodbye now, and we'll Kevin and I will be in touch soon.
Yeah, cool. Good luck, everybody, with your books. Keep working on your books.
Right. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Listen to Guy sometimes. Bye.
Yeah, listen to him sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. Bye.
Bye.
An advertising student.